You're going to find out very early on tonight exactly what I believe the best malts are. That is the best malt whiskies that are not single malts. I think you already know what they are. I think we're going to be able to cover this very, very easy in about 5 minutes into the vPub. We can either have an early night and just all go home after that, or we can continue to push and look beyond the ones that we've already explored, the ones that's already gained a wee space in our heart or our shelf, or perhaps even our perma shelf, and look to see what's available beyond that. I'll see you in a second. Hello, whiskey folk. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Thursday night. Welcome to the vPub. Wonderful to see you all. Wonderful to have you all back again to hang out for a wee bit of whiskey time on a Thursday night with me. 2020, I think it was, late 2020, I did the first vPub that was dedicated to blended malts. You might remember I invited Stuart Baxter he was with Douglas Lang at the time, responsible for their remarkable regional malts, and we invited him on to talk about the concept of blended malts. And then about a year or so, it was early 2021, I think, or early 2022, actually. So it was just over a year before I covered the topic again, and we're probably about just over a year again before we're looking at it for the third time. So our cadence is probably just round about every year or so, and I think that's good. I think that's good to dedicate one annual vPub, at least, actually, to this category, blended malt whiskey. And as I said in the intro there, you can look over my shoulder, you can see the ones that I've kind of laid out here, ones that I find are interesting or enjoying. But right in the middle there's three bottles in particular that you'll see: Campbeltown Loch, Compass Box, Orchard House, and Thompson Brothers SRV5. That's the 8-year-old from Thompson Brothers. Those are the best that are available today. You could put an argument forward for Douglas Lang's remarkable regional malts, fantastic things coming out, really, honestly. Even the Naked product from Edrington, 40% in the UK, 43% elsewhere. Fantastic malt whiskey for very, very low investment. Wonderful stuff. Then at the higher end of things, Spice Tree is about £50 now, I think, for Compass Box's Spice Tree. It's fantastic. That's the one I based the last vPub on to talk about this topic. And then at the higher end, we've got Flaming Heart, one of the slightly more expensive products from Compass Box there as well. I think the reason that I'm going with the Campbeltown Loch and the Orchard House and Thompson Brothers is because of the value proposition, because of the price. These are all round about, Campbeltown Loch's about £39. Orchard House is about 42, 43, something like that. And great value on the 8-year-old from Thompson Brothers. That is £35 for that 8-year-old blended malt. Solera blended malt as well. That's why I've those three are the ones that I would consider perma-shelf. And if you want proof of that, perma-shelf is something that you want to always kind of have there. You want to have a backup of it. You want to make sure that it's kind of there so that when you're in a mood for it or you want to share it, you can reach for it. Here's my backup Compass Box. This has been there for a wee while. You already know I buy backups or different batches of the Campbeltown Loch. And absolutely the same. All of these have been on the shelf for a while, actually. This is I can't remember what they called it now. Tongue in cheek, they called it the extra special 2022 glass shortage edition Compass Box SRV5. Sorry, not Compass Box, Thompson Brothers, apologies. So there we are. The job's done, isn't it? We can all just relax now and go home. Maybe hang out with you for a couple of minutes and the job's finished. That's the best That's the best malts that are not single. But I think we want to talk about that, don't we? We want to talk about that thing that they are not single, because I think it should give us the power to bring probably one of the most exciting categories, one of the most flexible. If we truly follow flavour before anything else, that should give us just the most exciting place to explore blended malts. So we're going to step through. We're going to talk about that tonight. Of course, we're going to push beyond these. We're going to see if there's any other ones out there that are exciting or interesting, and see if we can uncover more. That's what we're going to be talking about tonight. The concept of blended malts, what makes them different, what I think makes them exciting, and then I ask some critical questions, what they could be, what they are, and what they should be. But now I'm going to take a minute and I'm going to jump in to the lounge and welcome some of you beautiful whiskey folk and dedicated barflies. How are we doing? Have I got everything running okay? There's a lot of orange. Just make sure that the sound and everything's okay. I'll wind back a wee bit and pick up what I've missed. Julian Rickman, good to welcome you here, Julian. I hope you're doing very well. He's saying happy Easter. Hi, happy Easter to you. It is Easter weekend coming up, isn't it? Julian, it's nice to welcome you here. Tim Hoekstra is here. Graham Fraser, fantastic. Graham, good to see you. Good to see you too, Tim. I hope you're both doing very well. George L, Lee J Brown, Jerry Miller, Rick Johnson, Whiskey with Molly. Good to see you all. Wonderful to have you in. Whiskey with Wine Trails is here as well. Good to see you, Tom. And Great Drams is here saying good evening, Aquavita and Barflies. Graham Drams, sorry, not Great Drams, Graham Drams. I wonder if, is that the first time I've read out your name? My brain's a bit foggy these days. I think it's the first time, but it's nice to welcome you. Let's pick up some orange, scroll down. Whiskey Straight Al, good to see you, buddy. I hope you're doing very well. He's saying good evening. And North Coast Drama, also Northern Ireland alongside Al. We've got Tony saying good evening as well. And Papa Q is in saying looking forward to this topic, Roy. Glad to have you, Papa Q, and I'm glad you're looking forward to it. Sugar Kitty is here too. One of our admins tonight. It's been a long time since I've thanked our moderators. That's the Wee Blue Spanners. They help keep things clean if people are being cheeky or rude, which doesn't really happen here. It doesn't happen much at all. But sometimes we get the bots in and things like that. But it's nice to have you here, Sugar Kitty, and anybody else that's looking after us tonight as well. Michael Wood is here saying welcome. He's joined the Aquavita Barflies. Nice to have you, Michael. So Michael's clicked on desktop. I think you can do it on Android as well. There's a join button underneath, and it means that because of the amount of people that's clicked that join button and paid $1.99 a month and had access to the cool whiskey themed and channel themed emojis and things like that to color up the chat and stuff, and also the wee Barfly loyalty badges. But what they're actually doing is keeping the vPubs completely ad-free. So isn't it nice when you click on a vPub and you don't need to sit through an ad, or especially if you're listening to it podcast style and you're breaking it up a little bit into chunks, you don't need to sit through ads in between either. Michael, thanks for supporting and being a barfly. Graham Young is here saying cheers Aquavita, cheers barflies. Just a quick check-in from me tonight. Dad's birthday, so out to dinner we go. Good for you, Graham. Happy birthday to your dad, and thanks very much for thinking of us and dropping in to say hello. I hope you have a great night. Probably we'll still be here when you get back from dinner, Graham. Maybe not tonight. Max Kreitner is saying, good evening, Roy. Good to see you, Max. Looking forward to seeing you in Limburg at the end of the month, buddy. Good to have you in here tonight. Herman is here saying, good evening. Good to see you, buddy. Maybe you'll be in Limburg too this year again. And Gav's Drams over in Edinburgh, I think you are, Gav. Wonderful to welcome you in as always, buddy. One Glassman, that's my friend Warner from the States, saying cheers to you all from Miami. Enjoying a spice tree to start. Perfect and on theme tonight, Warner, and I hope you're enjoying it. Jimmy Jazz is here saying good evening, pouring some Compass Box Flaming Heart, always a treat, absolutely, one of the more premium ones. It's over my shoulder here. Glenn Dunklin saying happy Good Friday, nice to have a vPub where I'm not at work. It's nice to have you here, Glenn, always wonderful to welcome you in, buddy. I hope you're doing well. I'm missing some of the big comments. If Savar is in, Savar Björgfinsson, our Icelandic friend, I missed a super chat from you, Savar, last week. I was going through and doing the chapters after the vPub. I spotted your super chat and I felt really bad straight away. I should not be missing when people buy me drams. Nick Gascoigne is celebrating being a member for 6 months of St. Evening Oil, and happy Easter. Mickey Larson's bought me a dram, and I have already missed one, but I'm going to catch that, don't worry. Mikey Larson, it looks like Mikey Larson, he's bought me a dram and he's saying good evening, celebrating 6 months as a barfly. Buying me a dram to celebrate being a supporter for 6 months, Mikey. You're a wonderful man. Thank you very much. It's nice to welcome you here, and cheers for your support. Cheers. Let's go back up and see who I missed. Andrew M. Celebrating being a barfly for 12 months is celebrating the Noble Rebel Smoke Symphony. What do you think about it, Andrew? You might find that is in the offing tonight. you might find that I pick it up and talk about it. If you're wondering about what bottles I'll talk about tonight, if you're in the live chat, you'll notice in the live chat tonight that there's a poll at the top of the chat. Click on that and place your vote. I'm really hoping that the Compass Box Juveniles wins that tonight, because I'm dead keen to open that. I'm really intrigued by the packaging, and I'll show you why a wee bit later. But if you click on that and vote, I'll pick at least the top two. I think probably just the top two to keep it neat tonight. I'll uncork the top two out of those 4 that you guys picked tonight, and that's what we can uncork. I'll still hold up the other bottles and show you what they are, but they're just ornaments until we actually crack them open and taste them and talk about them. The other dram is from Gary Cobb. Cheers, Roy, for everything. Thank you very much, Gary, and thanks to you as well. I do believe that you're thinking about joining us for the Glasgow Whisky Festival in November, buddy. Look forward to that. Highland Hamish is here. Greetings from Inverness. Thompson Brothers and Dougie Lang blends would fool many malt snobs and blind lineups. We need to talk about that, Hamish, don't we? We need to talk about the B word, the blends and everything. We need to talk about our perspective and the way that we look at blended malts, especially when we're trying to explore as many Scottish malt distilleries as possible as a single malt. We can be a wee bit kind of narrow-minded. Maybe you use the word snobbish there. I think it does actually. It's valid at times. And I think that we do kind of almost clip our own wings a little bit, because if we are really chasing, rather than just check boxes, if we're chasing flavour, which I think is by far the most fascinating thing about whiskey is flavour, I think that blended malts can be fantastic. And time again, as you quite rightly point out, I've slipped it into blinds. I've enjoyed it myself in a blind, and it's done very, very well. Often strongly outperformed lots of celebrated single malts. But much like the single malts, it depends on the blend. And Tim is saying, yes, doing well. I hope you're well as well. Good to have you, Tim. And good to hear that you're doing well. Ian Bruce is saying, good evening, Roy and all the barflies. Never win. Chris is saying, ahoy, malt mates. Been so busy with work. I've had limited accessibility to the vPubs over conflicts. I know what it's like, Chris. Life is just super busy, but honestly, Chris, you've been here from the beginning, my friend, and it's just wonderful to see you every time you pop in. Whiskey Games, Matt Bishop is saying, evening, Roy, drinking Italian blended whiskey from Pune Distillery, barley, wheat, and rye in the mash bill. Missing my Great King Street, must buy a new bottle. So Great King Street, I think they've rebranded now. They're talking about it's the Glasgow blend and the artist blends now. I think they've dropped that Great King Street thing. But what you're talking about there, Matthew, is blended Scotch whiskey. And I think as we welcome in everybody and say thank you all so much for joining me tonight to talk about a topic that often puts a lot of people off, the B word, blended. Puts people off buying it, exploring it. If you're into your single malt whiskey, it puts you off perhaps even participating in a vPub, where that's going to be the thing that we're going to talk about. For me, that's a wee bit of a shame. But I do think that there remains a bit of confusion out there in the community today. Some of the comments that's come in, some people saying things like, you know, blends have their place and blends. And we need to be very, very clear here. There are 2 whiskies made in Scotland, grain whiskey and malt whiskey. That's it. That's all. If you mix the 2 together, you've got blended Scotch whiskey. So that's your Dewar's, that's your Johnnie Walker, that's your Chivas, that's your blended Scotch whiskey. That's what it is. If you mix 2 grain whiskies together, you get a blended grain. That's like something like Compass Box hedonism. There's really not a lot of blended grain out there. If you mix 2 malt whiskies together, you get blended malt. It is absolutely a completely different drink from blended Scotch whiskey. Why? Because malt whiskey is made from 100% barley, batch made in a pot still, in Scotland. There's something else I want to say about that as well. Barley, pot still, batch made. Fine, that's the 3 things. Then you've got grain whiskey. That's continuously made. That's like an industrial, efficient process to make whiskey from any grain. So it's not batch made. It's not made from only malted barley. It's made from any grain, typically wheat, but occasionally you might find it made from corn and some other wee grains now and again as well, and they always use a wee component of malted barley in there. These are completely different drinks. Consider that batch made, malted barley only, and then any grain continuously made industrial scale, much higher strength, much purer spirit. That's how they make fairly inexpensive whiskey. Make no mistake. This is a much more efficient and cheaper spirit to produce. So they use that as the foundation, if you like, for blends, and then they flavour it with malt whiskies on top. Blended malts are not that. I understand that the word blended is confusing there. But blended malts are malt whiskies, fully malt whiskies that have been mixed together for whatever reason. Imagine that maybe a producer wants to vat their stocks before it ever touches the grain or meets, so it's maybe getting married on site. Maybe there are people out there that are specifically trying, and that's where we're going to be focusing on tonight, to bring a product that is a blended malt in order to achieve a specific flavour profile. A flavour profile that may be difficult to get from any single malt. Even a single malt that is vatted, mixed, blended. It's getting a wee bit confusing, right? A single malt is anything from a specific single distillery, but as soon as you take any two casks and mix them together, it's no longer single cask, it's still single malt, but it's mixed. And of course, if you're going to bottle thousands and thousands and release thousands of bottles at a time, you have to vat together lots and lots of barrels, maybe hogsheads and American barrels, and maybe some sherry butts and other things too that goes into this vatting in order for you to try and create a product that, especially if it's for your core range, is going to be maybe the same each time. So even single malts are in a sense blended, married, vatted, mixed, let's say. Even single malts are already blended. The problem with blended malts is that, one, it's got the B word in there, it says blended, so already the single malt people are stepping back. And two, because it's from multiple distilleries, maybe you're not getting the chance to tick off that single malt distillery. Maybe you're not getting the chance to explore that single malt distillery a wee bit more, like you normally would. I think that, if I'm honest, I suffered from the same. I wasn't that excited by blended malts because I had far too much single malt whiskey to explore. Back when I got into whiskey, though, I could argue that there wasn't much distraction there. Compass Box were making lots of noises, making great whiskey too, and I enjoyed dabbling with blended malts from Compass Box. There was Johnnie Walker Green. I've got a Johnnie Walker Green here. And that was pretty much it. A few years later, along came the other ubiquitous blended malt that everybody knows alongside Johnnie Walker Green, and that is Monkey Shoulder. I don't have any Monkey Shoulder on hand tonight. I usually have it on the shelf. I quite enjoy it. It's easy, it's simple, crowd pleaser to have around, and it's very, very inexpensive. I don't have any on hand tonight. I would probably be quite happy to enjoy it if I did. However, this wee Johnnie Walker Green label, this 15-year-old, despite it having that age statement on there, I'm not enjoying this. And I've tried really hard. This is about the flattest ever experience I've had from a Johnnie Walker Green. I think it's almost sickly. It's difficult to enjoy. It's just, I don't know why. I can't explain why. This will be mostly from Diageo stock, you would think. It's all aged 15 years old. Yes, it's reduced to 43%, but it's not. There's something that's making this not very enjoyable, and I've loved this whiskey in the past. I used to recommend it regularly. It's just not there right now. If you want to experience good Johnnie Walker Green, maybe you need to look at Dusties and auctions and things for older ones. If anybody's looking for a wee tip, listen to the Dramface podcast. It's back. It's out. For everyone, it's going to be appearing with you next week, from the start of next week. If you're a Dramface member, it's already available to you now. But Scott Monroe picked up a Johnnie Walker Green, and he's got all the tips in the podcast if you're going to be buying Johnnie Walker Green at auction in order to pick up a good one. Peter Hunt is saying, oh, speaking of Johnny Walker Green Label, I picked up the old Pure Malt 15-year-old 1 litre. It's incredible, Peter, right? 1 litre for £40 at auction. Definitely prefer it to the new iteration. That's pretty much exactly in line with what Scott is saying on the. And if you want to know how to identify what the older ones are, they talk about it at length on the podcast. Carson is saying Monkey Shoulder also absolutely is a staple amongst barkeepers for many cocktails. Old fashions are just the beginning. Absolutely. It's just done such a great thing. That Monkey Shoulder is, I think it's one of the best selling malt whiskies in the US. I think it's well inside the top 10 now, mixing it with the Glenfiddich, which is its stablemate when you think about it, the Glenlivets, the Glenmorangies, all the popular malts. Jimmy Legg is in. Good to see you, Jimmy. Brilliant to have you in. Johnny Walker Green has been bland for 15 years, Aquavitae. I think it's perhaps continuing on a downward curve. And I think that we could maybe touch on that a wee bit, Jimmy, just now. Let's touch on that because it's quite interesting. Ian Bruce is saying sometimes people need to realize if the blended market goes, then so will the single malts and single casks. I get what you're saying. I understand completely what you're saying, Ian. It's all part of the same big landscape, isn't it? Sugar Kitty is saying our friend Sevar is here now. Sevar, I don't know when you appeared, buddy, but I've apologized already for missing your super chat last week. I'm very sorry. I picked it up when I was doing the chapter markers afterwards. Occasionally it happens, but I try really hard not to miss the super chats when they come through, buddy. But thank you very much if you're in. And Jimmy is saying, I don't think blended puts me off. 40% puts me off far more. Aye, that's super interesting, isn't it? Most of the blended Scotch whisky out there is 40%, export strength 43. If this truly has been declining, and I don't know if it's been declining in general, but I'll tell you right now, this is the least I've enjoyed Johnny Walker Green. I'm reluctant to pour it, but I will. I'm not going to put it in a clean glass. I've got 4 clean glasses here. I'm going to pour 4 drams tonight after this opening dram, and that's my. I'm going on a trip tomorrow. It's Easter weekend after all. And I'm taking my son away. So we're up early. Let's pour a tiny wee dot of this green label. Let's give the glass a rinse first. Let's do it fairly. And see if it's as poor and as flat as I remember. It's not very good to go into a bottle with a negative mindset, right? Almost wanting it to be poor. But I've paid my money for this. It would be nice if I could find a way to enjoy it, for it to redeem itself. I'm pouring it on the back of something that's much more communicative, much brighter, much louder. This is quiet. It's just soft. I mean, this is like, it noses like a very smooth whiskey. There's not much life in this wee glass. Yeah, here's my problem with it. Firstly, let me open by saying, if we found ourselves in a wee group somewhere and this was the only bottle of whiskey that we had to share, we'd be pouring it and we'd be getting it on just fine. There is nothing bad about this. I would argue that there are faults in this, though. And the fault is that it's just absolutely linear. It's just flat. There is no life in it. There is nothing that steps up and says, I am switching up. I am complex. I'm giving you flavors here. Here's one flavor. Here's another flavor. The development is very, very soft, and then it tails off to a very kind of almost sickly, burnt sugar finish that's not Moorish in much in any way at all. That's weird, because this is a blended malt. So they should be literally able to take different components to make this sing, to make it really be interesting, to make it even grab attention as it's sipped, even at a lowly 43%. Not all Johnnie Walker Green Labels are going to be like this. I was surprised. I actually bought this bottle back in 2020 for a vPub, and the subject of the vPub that I abandoned, I didn't go ahead with it, not only because of this bottle, but for other reasons, was if you only had one, like the Highlander line, right? There can only be one. If you can only take one whiskey, and that whiskey has to be with you, this was in the consideration for that. Because it was a 15-year-old whiskey, and at the time you could buy it easily for £35 and less, sometimes even cheaper on offer. And the previous bottle I had to this, I had to say, you know, this is a good wee whiskey, despite it being 43%. Is it as good as the original pure malts, Green Label pure malts? Yeah, no. But you have to talk about what's available, what you can buy. Then I bought this and opened this and I thought, oh, that's a shame. And it's just a bit flat. It's crazy flat. It's just, Diageo own some of the best distilleries in Scotland. Amazing distilleries. It should, this is not the grain that's causing the issue in this. It's only malt whiskies that's in this product. This should be better than this. And if they're trying to make it to that on offer price point, the sub £30 on offer, £35, don't bring it out. This 15-year age statement on it, bring it out as a rock solid £45, £50 whiskey. Maybe a nudge more if you give us natural presentation and 46%. We'd pay more for it. 15-year-old malt whiskey, but make it sing. Make it the type of whiskey that makes people want to love whiskey and understand what it is, because I don't think that that's what this is. I think this is just another drink, and that's what Johnnie Walker does very well with the rest of its lineup. Jimmy Legacy, sorry, it jumped there, but I think it was the one that I picked up there, Jimmy, about it being bland for 15 years. And Peter Hunt is saying, oh, speaking of Johnnie Walker, I picked up that one too. I'm just looking for the orange. It's Jimmy's comment. I can almost taste the caramel in that Green Label, he's saying. It is weak stuff. I think you and I are probably having a similar experience, Jimmy, with a similar batch of product. Okay, let me talk about, we've established that blended malt is a very, very different thing. But the interesting thing that I wanted to pick up based on Jimmy's comment is that whether it's a blended malt or a blend, what we're seeing just now is a boom in whiskey enjoyment in general, whether it's malt whiskey, blended whiskey, or whatever it is. We're seeing the whole world kind of wanting to get their hands on whiskey. Malt whiskey in particular has suddenly started to really ramp up in premium and value versus blends. It's going like this. So if you require that malt whiskey to flavor the blends, you've got to ask, if there's more profit, if it's more lucrative for them to preserve the integrity of the really good quality malt whiskey in order to sell it at some point in the future as a single malt. I'm not just talking about Diageo here. I'm talking about anyone whose main business is based on blended Scotch whiskey. The blenders, you know them well, Edrington, Grant's, Diageo, of course, Chivas Brothers, Pernod Ricard, Beam Suntory even. These people are focused on blends more than anything. That's where the cash comes from. That's the business model. So they need malts to flavour those blends. But it's also becoming very distracting for them now as they look at the value of this single malt whiskey. So if the really, really good quality single malt is far more lucrative to sell as a single malt, what's going into the blends? This is something that Stefan from the that from our Whisky Club talks about a lot. What's happening there is does that mean that blends are going to struggle in terms of quality, in terms of flavour, in terms of experience, in favour of a more and more single malt whisky being made available? And when you think about that, that kind of makes a lot of sense. It really does. Now look at blended malts. Why would you take good quality single malt Scotch whisky and mix it with other good, indifferent, or slightly subpar quality single malt whisky in order to come out with a blended malt? Why would you do that? It's a valid question. If you've got a peach of a whisky, a peach of a single malt, whether it's a cask, small batch, vatting, whatever it is, you're just going to maybe want to put it out as a single malt. But imagine that it's pretty good, but it's missing a wee component. Now imagine hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of other malt whiskies out there sitting in casks that have all the same thing. If we're looking for a full-on flavour, if we're looking for complexity, if we're looking for everything to be filled there, you know, there's an argument that you can take these things and put them together to fill out where the gaps are. More than that, you can take a wish list, I would love my whiskey to taste like this type thing from somebody, or even your own mind, and use the components that you've got at hand in order to make that, to deliver a product that can do it, and potentially not have to take only expensive malts in order to create it. We need a bit of savoury and a bit of smoke. We can take this. Well, it's not very sweet or fruity, but it's got the savoury and smoke. Here's something that doesn't really have any savoury smoke, or it doesn't have, it's only a fruit thing. This is just a fruit thing and nothing else. And then here's something that's got a bit of dryness, a bit of mineralic quality to it. And you can start to mix these things together in order to bring us blended malts. And the ages can be all over the place too. The age doesn't really matter if it's flavour forward. That's surely when it gets interesting. Has it been interesting? For years, maybe not so much. If you only had Johnnie Walker Green for years, then eventually a Compass Box comes along and round about the early 2000s, right? They start to make a name for themselves and start to carve out this concept of blended malts. There's been a few others over the years, but it's not been much of a distraction. Recently, though, and it was just over a year ago the last time we did a vPub on blended malts, there was well over 100 on all the top retailers, well over 100 blended malts available from them, and that's still the case today. But I would say that when it's in the past, it's maybe been teaspoon stuff and oddball things. I can see that what was happening now is more people are taking a leaf out of the Compass Box Orchard House book, like this Campbelltown Loch, fantastic, and the Thompson Brothers SRV5 8-year-old, fantastic. And they're saying, no, there's a space for this. There are flavour-driven whiskey lovers, malt lovers, who are looking for something that's delicious, easy, and there's not a lot of anxiety with it. Just delicious malt whiskey to pour and enjoy and drink with friends. £40 and less, all of these bottles, all of these 3 bottles I'm talking about. So, but they've been out for a year now. Campbelltown Loch's a year, SRV5's been out a year, and Orchard House has probably been out for 2 years now. So what else is coming along? That's what I'd like to talk about. How are we getting on with our poll? I'm glad to see that Compass Box Juveniles is in the lead. I really want to open it. Second place is Old Perth Cask Strength. You're interested to hear it. That's a 2021 bottling, I should mention, of the Old Perth Cask Strength. I've had it for a wee while. It appeared on the last time I did the vPub, if I remember well. I didn't open it, of course. I've got Elements of Islay, bourbon cask Elements of Islay. We all know how fantastic the Elements of Islay sherry cask was. One of those ones that really, really got traction quite quickly. I'll get a lot of people talking about it. But I was drawn to the bourbon cask one. I've got it here. I may open it. And we've also got a sherry cask available as well in the form of a Douglas Lane Scallywag 13-year-old. Again, a bottle that I've had around on the shelf for a wee while. But in the lead right now, it looks like Compass Box. I'm saying Juveniles. That's the English, because it's a place in France, or that bistro in Paris. Perhaps it's a different pronunciation. If Greg is in from Paris tonight, maybe he can help. But I guess it's Juvenile or something. But we'll say Juveniles for tonight. And Old Perth Cask Strength, those two look as if they are in the lead. I'm going to cover some other bottles that are already open that I think you should know about. Graham Fraser is saying one of the first blended malts in the 90s was Old Elgin from Gordon MacPhail. It was good, but not exciting. Interesting. Never tried or even heard of it before. That's not true. I'm pretty sure I've heard of it, Old Elgin, but never happened upon a bottle. Ian Bose is saying, I'll give a shout out for Dougie Ling's regional malts, particularly Timorous Beastie and Scallywag. Good value at 46%. Ian, I'm with you there. My pick of that bunch is Timorous Beastie as well, which is the Highland pick. I think it's fantastic. We were picking up that 18-year-old for sub £70, sometimes sub £60 on special offer a year or so ago. It's still fantastic stuff. Timorous Beastie is my pick of the range. It also includes the Epicurean. It includes the Galdrons from Campbelltown, Epicurean's Lowlands, Big Pete from Isla, Scallywag's the Speyside, and what am I forgetting? Rock Island, of course. This is the non-age statement, Rock Island. It's over my shoulder. It's just out of sight, actually. Sorry. Always on. If you the non-age statement, Rock Island is very young. You need to know it's very young, and it's also very peat forward as well. Maybe not as peaty as Big Pete, but not far off, honestly speaking. So Rock Island is often a really good price, but know that it's very young and spirit driven. Nothing wrong with that. And Ian Bruce is saying the reason behind using good malts and blends will be multifaceted. But could one reason be so that when a single malt is launched, it isn't swamped and mean prices can be set higher? Yeah, now we're getting into the business strategy of things, Ian, no doubt. I'm just thinking about the scale and the availability and the draw as you touch upon. Where is it? When's it going to be more interesting and more lucrative to add something delicious to a blend versus just to release it as a delicious single malt? Because I think that it's been pulled more and more in the direction of single malt as things go forward. We're all part of that, by the way. Danny Hevington is saying, I almost bought that Old Perth, but can't quite bring myself to pull the trigger. So I'm interested to your take on it, Aquaviti. So it looks like, Danny, I might be one of the ones open tonight. It's unpeated, sherry cask, Old Perth. It's 58.6% ABV, cask strength. So I might leave that one till a wee bit later. It looks like it may be getting open tonight, Danny. Greg is in. He's saying the whiskey name is anglicized because of the S at the end, as it is also a tribute to Tim, its Scottish owner. So no big deal if you say it like you do. Thanks, Greg. Thank you very, very much. And I didn't know that the owner of the bistro, I know his name to be Tim because I did a wee bit of reading on it before tonight, but I didn't know he was a Scotsman. Next, Nick Gascoigne is saying, shout out for Dramore, Dumbarton Rock. Oh, now there's one I've not tried, Dumbarton Rock. That's an oversight. I should have maybe considered seeking that out, Nick. Good call. And Hellswood is saying, Timorous Beastie 18-year-old, usually on offer for less than £60 from Aberdeen Whiskies. Bargain, as you know, and a huge favourite here, Aquaviti. Helen, I hope you and Andy are doing very well. It's brilliant to have you in, and I'm glad that you're enjoying it as well. Let's pick up a couple. Here's an interesting one. And when we're talking about Danny thinking about his Old Perth purchase and holding off, how about wanting to buy something for 2 years and not buying it? It was expensive. This is a 10-year-old whiskey, and it came out at £75. In the end, I paid £70 for it, so it stayed the same price, more or less. But I decided to buy this, and the reason I wanted to buy this is because I was curious for a couple of reasons. This is a product that's been put together by Greg Glass. It's under the Whiskey Works label. I'm a huge fan of Greg Glass already because of his history at Compass Box, yes, but what he's been able to do at Fettercairn, he's transformed Fettercairn into something that I literally just walked past regularly to something that I'm really curious about. His brand new warehouse release is just out. I haven't bought it yet, but I'm very curious. I think it's on the price purchase radar for me. So, of course, I can't. It's not a recommendation. It's just something that I want to buy because I enjoyed very, very much the first and second release. Third release, not so much. I think it's the third release that was the most recent one before the new one, if I'm making sense. I didn't love it quite as much. But the way he's transformed even the standard Fettercairn 16-year-old, bringing it all natural, what a difference. Just wonderful stuff. So Greg Glass is behind the Whiskey Works. So if you've maybe seen the Quartermaster and a couple of other expressions, it looks like there's only been 3 or 4 ever. But one of them really drew my attention, and I finally pulled the trigger on it. This is Whiskey Works King of Trees. It's a 10-year-old product, 46.5% ABV. Where does the name come from? It's a blended malt whiskey first and foremost. I don't know what the makeup is. They're not nearly as transparent as, say, a Compass box. But if you read the chatter, it looks like it may be a decent component of liquid in here. But they've tried to put together a nice, interesting blended malt whiskey. And they have succeeded. They've succeeded because I'm still trying to get my head around this. Interesting is the word. But what makes this unique is that there's Scottish oak maturation in here as well. Not a lot. I believe that this was the product of, so Scottish oak is not a farmed crop. Scottish oak is very, very, like other similar European oaks, it's very knotty, it's difficult to cooper and things. I think it's even worse than Spanish and French oak, of course. There's not a lot of Scottish oak casks out there. There were 2 wind-felled trees somewhere in some Scottish estate, and out of the 2 trees, they were able to make, I believe, a single cask. So they couldn't even mature all of the whiskey in that cask, but they were able to mature a proportion of the whiskey in this Scottish oak cask and add it into the vatting, the blended malt vatting specifically. The batch number here, I think it's the only batch that's ever been released. It's a 2019 batch, WV01. And I have to say that, like I say, I'm only just beyond the shoulder on this, 3 drams in or so, and I'm still trying to get my head around it a little bit. Is it a £70 whiskey? Probably not. Is it worth £70 because of the interest level? Probably yes. Is it going to be a wee bit different from everything else that you have on the shelf? Probably yes, but maybe not an easy way to put your finger on exactly what makes it different. 1 minute it's coming off very sweet and custard and pudding, and the next minute you go back, it's very floral and grassy. Quite complex. It's fairly newly opened. It's only been open about a week here, so I need a wee bit of time with this. But here is another blended malt that's literally been released and sat on the shelf for, well, since 2019, and we're in 2023 now. It's just sat on the shelf. I don't think the outturn was particularly big. 2,157 bottles. And it's still available at retail now. So despite this really quite interesting and unique product, you know, this, what is it? Is that King of Trees? Is a blended malt? 70 quid? Oh, 75 quid? Oh. You know, I think a lot of people were like me and just kind of, I'm not sure, and step back. What I should have probably done is try a sample first before I bought it. But I don't regret buying it. I think I'm still trying to get my head around it. I'm still trying to work out what it's all about. And I think that things might change and this might become a wee bit more interesting as time goes on. I bought this specifically for a blended malt vPub. I was pretty sure that this was going to be a pretty interesting and good whiskey. It may be there. And if it gets there, I'll be sure to give you a further update in the future. But it's not an easy one for me to recommend anyone get out and spending 70 or 75 pounds on, unless you're that type that's curious about the fact that there's Scottish oak in there. It's been made by Greg Glass, who's somebody I'm fast becoming a fan of. And like I say, it is going to be really quite different. Then, much like on the back of the Compass box, we got Campbellton Loch, and then we got the Thompson Brothers, and all of these kind of blended malts are coming across. We hear from Loch Lomond Group. Somebody is in drinking tonight, one of them. Somebody's drinking this one, the Smoke Symphony. Now, I haven't drank all of this myself. I've been given samples of this out, but I've had a few samples of this right now. So the Smoke Symphony is an interesting one. I'll just show you that up here. We've got 3 flavour profiles in this. And Roy, did you go out and buy the entire range? Aye, I did. I paid my own money for this because, number one, I'm quite encouraged by it. I would like to see it and taste it. I'd like it to be good. But the other thing is that I have to be just honest and objective about these things. And if these 3 things were given to me as freebies, you know, I think it changes the dynamic a wee bit. Maybe not for me. Maybe I could power past that. But I need you not even to be considering that. So I paid $39.95 direct from the Noble Rebel website for all of these. I think I got free shipping. So I just paid the $39.95 for all 3 of these. So I'll show you the second one again because I didn't dwell on it. This is the Hazelnut Harmony. And the other one I held up there is the Orchard Outburst. So we've got a kind of nutty profile here. We've got a fruity profile here. And we've got a smoky profile here as well. I'll give you my resume on these where I am today, right now. All of these whiskies are a no-brainer. You're not going to buy any one of these, bring it home, taste it and go, oh, I wish I hadn't spent $39.95 on that bottle. All of these are great whiskies, good whiskies. I started off being drawn to the Orchard Outburst because I was thinking about Loch Lomond and that, you know, maybe they'd be using some of their Chardonnay wine yeast spirit in there and things. And there indeed is a wee bit in there. But if you're looking for that experience, it's just part of the mix. It's not the full story. The Orchard Outburst, this middle one here, is just a very fruity, very easy. Even it's not simple. So if I say crowd pleaser, believe me, I'm not just saying it's a simple product. There's complexity here as well. It's fruity and it does sparkle a wee bit. Good, solid, fruity whiskey. It was my favourite at the start. Quickly switched to this nutty one. I am now enjoying this nuttier one more. The reason that I am excited about these 3 whiskies is for 2 reasons. This is flavour forward. It's been put together by a company, by a blender that we've become very comfortable putting our trust in. And look at this on every single label. They've done this. Non-chill filtered, natural colour, product of Scotland. 46% ABV, sub £40. This is the type of whiskey that we're asking for as enthusiasts. The only thing that's missing for a lot of people, potentially age statement, but let's put that to the side for a second, becoming less of an issue as time goes forward, as we realise how good younger whiskey actually is these days. There is no distillery name on here. So they've gone for the Compass Box, Douglas Line Regional Malts, Wheems Malts, branding a product in order to sell the brand and the flavour prospect rather than the geographical distillery location. When you take the whiskey enthusiast, the whiskey aficionado out of that, does that not just make perfect sense? No, we have not chosen to follow a geographical location. We've chosen to go with flavour. Now, they didn't have every single colour available in the palette of Scotch malt whiskey. They only had what was available to them, the stocks that they had to make up these whiskies. Have they done a good job? I think they've done a fantastic job. These 2 are standouts for me. This is still a fantastic whiskey. This is going to struggle with me because it's a red wine finish. But I think the biggest problem that this one has is that there's a £34 whiskey out there, a single malt Leitchick with a Rioja finish, this one is going to have to try and go toe-to-toe with. But if you enjoy that Leitchick Rioja, maybe this is a profile that you're going to enjoy too. This brings the smoke. It brings a nice, interesting burst of red fruit along as well. Brings a lovely pot of tobacco and various other delicious, honestly, a very, very good whiskey. But for me, if you were going to pick up only one of these, if you're fruity is your thing, maybe the orchard, but this has just got a wee bit more. This has got a wee bit more density to the spirit, a wee bit more kind of richness, a wee bit more depth. And dare I say, even although this fruity one is quite a complex, sparkly thing, I think this is just a wee bit more engaging to sit with as a sipper. For £40, for sub £40 on all of these, they're all crackers. This is the type of new releases that gets me excited about whiskey. Why? Because I can afford them. There's no heartache here. There's no heartache here. It's £40. It's not like we're going out and spending £80 on what used to be £40 only to be disappointed. We're spending £40. Danny Heventon is saying, I see there's a new blender on the block from Turntable Brewhouse. Appeared in an Aberdeen whiskey shop the other day. I read we shared on Dramface the news release for Turntable. It was embargoed up until yesterday. I think it was yesterday or today. 3 blended whiskies, but they're leading with their special releases. So they're not blended malts. They're blended Scotch whiskies. So there's grain in there as well, and it's £70 a bottle. We're assured that it's fantastic whiskey making up the blends. That remains to be seen. And they reassure us that they're going to follow up with something of a lesser price as part of their core range in the future. Interesting. Not tried anything yet, Danny. Carson is saying, how does the Orchard Outburst compare to the Compass Box Orchard House? I think that they're completely different. If you like spirit forward, Compass Box Orchard House is much more spirity, whereas the Orchard Outburst from Noble Rebel is a little bit more brittle, a little bit more fizzy, a little bit more sparkly. I think that they are very, very similar profile, but at the same breath, a wee bit different. Interestingly, I've not compared them side by side. I'm just going on pure memory for that. But listen, it's roughly about the same price. And if that's your style, if that's your profile, I think you're not going to be unhappy switching them out and trying one and buying one time and the Orchard House another time. Jimmy like is saying we're missing that guy from Loch Lomond today. He is the king of blending. You talk about Michael Henry. So Michael Henry is often in the chat tonight. He's the guy responsible for these. I hope he doesn't mind. I'm just going to speak very candidly about them, regardless. It would be difficult for me if they were bad whiskies. Fortunately, they are absolutely not. They are the opposite of bad whiskies. But he's genuinely trying to bring interesting, natural whiskies. These fill that love. I mean, look at this. The colour of these. Gorgeous. Natural. This is the color of whiskey, and the reason that they've managed to get this slightly darker hue into the Smoke Symphony one is obviously using a bit of a Rioja wine cask. So using a cask to bring flavor as well as color as well, rather than being lazy and cynical and deceitful, honestly speaking, and just dumping in some spirit caramel at the end. That's not what's happened here, and they should be applauded for it. Jimmy I noticed he was saying he didn't agree about something, but it just jumped down to Jimmy is saying, I don't agree that young whiskey is any better than it's ever been. But Jimmy, it absolutely is. When we talk about young whiskey, I'm talking about whiskey that can be enjoyed at 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. Whiskey that is the way that whiskey is being made now today, especially at the smaller producers. Suddenly fermentation times are being allowed to just be as long as they need to be. Distillation is slowing down. People are looking at barley. People are looking at yeast. They're looking at everything bar efficiency. If we judge young whiskey on where we are today, it's quite narrow. It's going to be super interesting to judge young whiskey as the years tick by. I think it's only going to get better and better and better. And that young whiskey, as the years tick by, interestingly, is also going to become obviously more and more mature as well. I think that to consider in the 90s to be sitting down and celebrating and enjoying and chewing and really getting to grips with a 3-year-old whiskey in the early 90s. It really happened. But we're doing it regularly just now, and some of them are fantastic. Not all new whiskey is brilliant. Some of it is very, very good. Glad you're enjoying the Noble Rebel. Aquavite, says Alistair Gray, did the same and bought all 3, and once finished, they will be replaced. That's fantastic, Alistair. Glad you're enjoying it, but tell me what's your favourite. Christopher Malloy's bought us a wee dram. Does SWA handicap blended malts with the name? I've argued it before, Christopher, and I'll say it again tonight. I've managed to get through 55 minutes of the vPub tonight without saying this. Blended Scotch whiskey makes sense. Anything else that's blended in the world, people understand whether you're blending tea, whether you're blending olive oil, whether you're blending wines. People understand the concept. Blended, it makes sense. What you're doing in blended Scotch whiskey is taking 2 different whiskies, grain and malt, and mixing it together. When you just take 2 malts and mix them together, it's still malt whiskey. That's not anything like a blended Scotch whiskey. There needs to be a way of making that different, making a differentiator there. And if you use the blended word, I think it causes a problem. I think it's confusing. I've often argued for just malt whiskey. Malt whiskey. We've got grain, call it grain. We've got malt, call it malt. That's just how it should be. If it's the product of a single geographical location, then you can further define it by saying, yes, it's a single malt or a single grain. But if you mix it together, it's just grain. It seems that the industry is almost limiting itself a wee bit there. And I think it's got so much to do with the fact that came into play 15 years ago, when there were not many blended malt whiskies around. And nobody probably cared much about it back then. Johnny Walker Green Label was there, Compass Box was there, a few other releases were out there. Now it's become quite a big thing, and a lot of people are put off, and a lot of people are therefore held back by that very word. Christopher, thanks for your dram. Cheers, nice to have you in, my friend. Scott Allen is here. Good to see you, Scott. He's saying, agree on the young whiskies. There was a time I would never touch anything under 12 years old. Today we're just getting marvelously deep, rich, super compelling. One of my favourite, can't reach past it drams. It's difficult to explain how much I'm loving Lag's Sherry Cask release. It's just so old school and so full and heavy. It's fantastic stuff. Danny Hevington has gifted 10 Aquavite memberships. That's very generous of you, Danny. Thank you so much, my friend. Thank you. So I'm thinking that these 3 wee releases from Noble Rebel are pretty good. The fact that they are all natural and £40 makes them very, very good. Very good. It'd be interesting to do a wee blended malt lineup one night, put the Compass Box Orchard House in there, Campbelltown Loch, put in Thompson Brothers SRV5, and put in 1 or 2 Noble Rebels, and maybe something else that we're going to uncork tonight. I haven't uncorked anything yet. Let's look at the poll. You're guiding me tonight. We are 328 votes in. Thank you all very much. Compass Box Juveniles, get your votes in just now. If any of you are holding back, it's in the top of the live chat. If you're watching this on Facebook, thank you very, very much. But the poll is actually in the YouTube live chat tonight. But out of the 329, we've got 34% have gone for Compass Box Juveniles, putting it clear ahead of second place, 27%, the Old Perth Cask Strength. Elements of Isla Bourbon Cask comes in 22% in third place, and Scallywag 13 at 17%. And I think the reason that Scallywag is last there is not a reflection on the quality or the enjoyment of the Scallywag, just the fact that it's a much more known thing. Okay, let's start with the Compass Box then. This is a curious thing. Look at this thing. North Coast Drama is saying, agreed, Hazelnut Harmony wins it for me too. Sipping a little LBD, so that's Little Brown Dog, isn't it, Tony? Wee Mongrel Batch 1, Noble Rebel to pour next. Fantastic. Wee Mongrel from Little Brown Dog is also a blended malt. One that I've not owned yet. I've tried and thought it was pretty fantastic too. So this is a Compass Box product, a wee bit like this pretty pricey Flaming Heart I've got. This is a 2018 batch of the Flaming Heart I have. There is now a 2022 batch out there as well, which if you look at the components that goes into that, there's a mature Clynelish in there, there's mature Kalila, very mature, like 3-decade-old Kalila and things in the new 2022 release. And also the spice tree here that's next to it. The spice tree is not too bad. I think it's about 48, 50 pounds, something like that. This was a wee bit more expensive. Comes in its own custom tissue, which is quite interesting. And I'll try and get it to focus on that. There's a wee seal there, a wee Compass Box Juveniles bell. Can you see the little bell there? It's a wee sticker that's sealing it. I almost don't want to pull it apart, but I will, and apologies for the noise it's going to make. It's going to make more noise in a minute. See if we can hear that. Do you hear? Yeah. Well, it sounds like sleigh bells, right? Right, this is going to be noisy. Let's try and get it over with quite quickly. There we go. Now I've got more layers of unpacking to do as well, because there's a big dollop of white wax, slightly creamy off-white wax on the top here. Yeah, there's a black sticker on the back. I'm not sure what that's about. 46% ABV. This is a Compass Box Juveniles. So the noise that you were hearing there was not the paper. And the punt underneath, look, they've included a bell. For what reason? I am not sure. There may be a reason behind this, but it wasn't until after it was delivered that I heard this noise and I went off to check out what it was all about. But I am quite excited to try this. I have had very good experiences with Compass Box in the past. Some of their more premium releases that I have not been able to afford, but I have tried. Some of them have been absolutely knockout. That was a very easy wax seal to open, by the way. So many wax seals can be brutal, but they've got some cord underneath this that made that very, very easy. So let's get this wee Juveniles open. And get it into our first of the clean glasses tonight. Put it in this arm glass. Not very loud on the glug here, but it's because it's got a rounded shoulders on it. Now, when we uncork, it's difficult to review whiskies. I can give you an initial impression. I can just give you the kind of feedback from the first pour, the neck pour, and not much more than that. We can't really review whiskies, and nobody ever really should. You know, whiskey needs time to relax a little bit. It needs time to round out. It needs time to settle. And if you just uncork a whiskey, you're not giving it much of a chance. This cost me £75, but it was one that I was keen to try. If you look at the makeup of this, I forget now. I think I might still have the sheet up here. I think it was mostly Balmenic. Yes, big chunk of Balmenic. So Balmenic famous for worm tub distillation and also famous for being tough to get your hands on, even from indies. A big chunk of Clynelish in here. 20% plus 10% refill sherry butt, Clynelish, and recharred hogshead. So 30%, about a third Clynelish, and then Glendullan and Strathmill making up the other third. So a third Balmenic, a third Clynelish, and a third. So how do I know what's in this? Because of the transparency from Compass Box, because of the fact that if you go to their website, they'll tell you. It used to be, I don't know if it's still the case, but it used to be if you inquired with a wee email direct to them and to say, oh, I'm really enjoying your juveniles. I see that it's made up of this and this. Could you tell me what ages those components are? They will respond and tell you what age the whiskies are by email as well. That's the nose I was hoping for, if I'm honest. There's a fair chunk of the community out there, some of them are friends I enjoy drinking with, that really love this style of whiskey. There's a lovely, clean, tropical fruit note to this. We know there's a huge element of Clynelish in here, so we're looking for a form of kind of a white candle wax, waxiness. It's here. It's even subliminally fed into us right by this wax seal on the top. But it is here. Crisp apple, green apple. Nothing in the way of a kind of peaty, nothing in the way of savoury. This is all kind of bright, outdoor, crisp, clean fruit. But there's a softness, there's a gentleness to it. There's a kind of sense of so there's no, it's not fizzy and vibrant. It's rounded and oily. Anyway, cheers everyone. Let's see what this wee juveniles is like. Okay, sorry for the silence. It's going to be hard to reach past this one. This is the type of whiskey that is right up my street, right up my street. So there's a sense of elegant purity, that lovely silkiness. Like I said, it's not kind of fizzy and sparkly. It's kind of really quite, it is quite soft, gentle, outdoors, clean, floral. Crisp apple on the nose is not, it's sweet apple. There's even a peachiness. There's a nectarine and peach thing on the palate. This is pricey whiskey. It's non-age statement, 46% ABV, but it's all natural and we can discover what's inside the bottle, £75. Sipping this, is it £75 whiskey? First impression, I have to say aye. In today's climate, it is. Delicious. In check. Almost Japanese. Almost Japanese in style. You know, nothing is particularly sticking. Everything is just together. Everything is intact. Everything is just clean. That is a nice whiskey to have on the shelf. I don't think it's going to be here very long. Every time I pick the bottle up, I'm going to be busted when I'm pouring a glass of it because there's a bell on it. Greg's Whiskey Guide is saying, I consider this version you have as a prototype to Orchard House, though different. Orchard House is obviously younger, 5 or 11 years old. I would say that, yes, the Orchard House plays much more spirit-driven than this. But you couldn't call this Juveniles a cask-driven whiskey either. What you could say about this is that this plays much more like think a really elegant teenager, like a Glencadam 15 might, Clynelish 14 when it was good. Or when it's a good batch, I should say. That's the area that we're in here. So, you know, the spirit is still has a good voice here, but this is not young. There's no rawness from the spirit here. This has just been, the sense is that everything's been from quite a quiet cask, but it's been given time. I wouldn't be surprised if a wee inquiry to Compass Box came back with really quite mature stock on this one. Something adding a bit of maturity, something to justify that £75 price as well, obviously. But this is a good whiskey. This is a good, easy whiskey. I don't know how much of a hook that there is. There's a lot of subtlety in this. So if you were pouring it for somebody that's new to whiskey, they could maybe appreciate the softness of it, how gentle it is, how fruity it is. But I don't know if there'd be any kind of, there wouldn't be a sense of any kind of bold hook here to get somebody new. I think this is for somebody who just likes a wee glass of decadence every now and again and isn't afraid to spend £70 or £75 on a bottle of whiskey. It's a lot of money. But it's quite drying on the finish. So it does bring a wee sense of that Moorishness as well. I'm very happy to have this tonight. Very happy. Lee J. Brown is saying a dram, you can put your feet up and enjoy slowly then. Aye, Lee J, exactly that. Exactly that. Maybe not when I've got you guys in tonight. I've gone a wee bit quiet with it, but that's okay. Peter Hunt is saying you were definitely having a whiskey moment there in short silence. Lovely to see. Thank you, Peter. Gino, it's nice to see that you don't mind. Gino is in as well. Good to see you. Gino, you're saying a little late to the party. Hello, folks. Royal. Look and sound great, buddy. Thank you very much, Gino. I hope you're looking and sounding great too. MM is saying enjoying some Cleanleash 14 right now. Once again, absolutely loving it. Good. MM Karsten, you've got a good bottle of your Cleanleash 14, haven't you? What else am I going to be opening tonight then? Chris Brook is saying this sounds like an excellent dram. I've heard such great things about Compass Box. I wish I could get it here in Ontario. Maybe I'll have to see if I can source it in Alberta. Listen, another issue I have, Chris, talking about blended malts is that very thing. You've hit the nail on the head, because even the Campbelltown Loch, maybe Orchard House I would hope you can get, but Campbelltown Loch and SRV5 from Thompson Brothers, you're going to struggle to get. My Permashelf blended malt whiskies. Maybe the juveniles, maybe it can, I don't know how big an outturn the juveniles was, and maybe something like this could appear on your shores, hopefully a wee Compass Box treat now and again. I know what you go through in Canada. Alberta's much, much better, of course, but Jimmy Legg is constantly lamenting his lack of choice. In fact, one of his comments inside Patreon was, one of the only blended malts he gets offered is Monkey Shoulder, and he doesn't buy Monkey Shoulder. And because we know where Jimmy is in his journey, we understand why. And here he is, he's saying, now I have a question I can ask every single person that's having a whiskey, but does it have a bell? That's right. It's the only one I've ever known to have a bell. The only other bell I can think of is, of course, the famous Bell's decanters, right? Peter Hunt is saying, I picked it up. It's jumped again. I got that one, Peter, didn't I? Who have I missed? Rick Johnson is saying the Compass Box Juveniles is $150 here in San Francisco. Oh, that does seem pricey. Rick, is it a $150 bottle? I don't know. Perhaps not. But not knowing what you're paying for other things in San Francisco makes that difficult for me. Rick, if you regularly are comfortable paying $150 for whiskey, if you think that this sounds like it's in your wheelhouse, it's difficult for me to recommend it, but that sounds pricey compared to what we're paying here. Greg's Whiskey Guide, right on point, fantastic. 14,894 bottles, Roy. What's remarkable is that it's still fairly widely available in the stockists that originally had it. I had no problem picking this one up very recently. Delicious. Really happy about that one. It's not easy to recommend at the price. Just good Scotch whiskey. Just good Scotch whiskey. Done very well. I often find that a lot of releases from Compass Box, they're kind of going for that kind of almost kind of Cleanleashy Brora style. There's no smoke in this, by the way. There's not any kind of peat smoke distraction happening here. But a lot of the releases that I've had from them in the past or tried or enjoyed, there's almost a Brora-like mission almost happening there, and that kind of makes a lot of sense. Jimmy Jazz is saying about the same as Flaming Heart and No Name. So he's talking about, Jimmy Jazz is talking about the price. Okay, so Flaming Heart here is a 125. No Name is about 110, 120. So 105, 110 for no name. So I would say that, yeah, it seems like you're being overcharged a wee bit for the juveniles. Doesn't stop it being good whiskey. It's difficult for me to comment whether it's $150 whiskey. Okay, where are we in the poll tonight? Old Perth cask strength is still number 2 with 27% of the vote. Elements of Isla was trying to catch up a wee bit. I'm curious to try that. I've had it before, loved it, bought it. Curious to get it opened again, but that can wait for another time. This is as can the Scallywag 13-year-old. Alistair McPhail's bought me a dram as well. Good to see you, Alistair. It's always wonderful to have you in, buddy. Love your social shares as well. Roy, a dram to toast your recovery from the C word. Another great vPub on a neglected topic. All power to your elbow and slant you, my friend. Alistair, you're a superstar. I'm going to raise a glass of... No, I shall finish my last wee sip of the juveniles. I predict I might pour another glass of this before we finish tonight, or before I slip off to bed. Cheers, Alistair. Thank you very much, buddy. Crazy that you and I have still to share a dram, right? After all this time, it will happen, buddy. A bit more of a traditional opening here. Oh, we've got the new... So I've had this for a wee while now, but we're in the new Morrison. So this used to be Morrison Mackay, didn't it? But it's now Morrison Distillers. And this is the new branding. So I'm noticing the new bottle as well with embossed Morrison on the bottom. These guys are also responsible for Aberargie Distillery, Carnmore Independent Bottlers. Oh, it's a wee ring that comes off. And it leaves this is what Doogie Crystal was talking about. This is what Doogie had written about on Dramface. This is a nice wee... I know that this doesn't change the flavour of the whiskey, but this is an attractive cork. That disc that I showed you there is left in place. If I get my face out of shot here, it might let you focus on it. It's an M, not a W there. But that's a nice little copper touch there. A little copper disc inset into the cork. This is sherry cask. 58.6%, I think. 58.6. Old Perth blended malt cask strength. Now, people were raving about this when it came out. There's no age or anything on it as well. So it could be that it's a vatting of mixed ages. But if the sherry casks are good and powerful, look at Teapot Dram from Glengoyne. We know that single-digit age statement. Oloroso cask whiskey, sherry cask whiskey, that style of whiskey at cask strength can be fantastic. Can this stand up to something like the Teapot Dram? Teapot Dram is a single malt. Everything's from Glengoyne. Oh my goodness, that nose. It's very on point and in profile with Teapot Dram. This is a neck pour, so I get a big blast of balsamic vinegar there. I know from experience that that'll fade. The vinegar will fall back and leave fruit, in my experience. But that's what I'm getting on the nose. I'm also getting a lot of kind of wet, moist tobacco. Red fruit. Super rich, cooked or certainly overripe red fruit. Some fig, fudgy prune and fig. A little weird, the vinegar note's still there. But there's a weird tomato vine, menthol, something green. Anybody that knows this style of cask, this style of whiskey, you know, often you can pick up quite a really nice offset, contrasty green note. I'm just coating the glass here because sometimes, you know, you can be smelling the glass and picking up things from the glass. It's nice just to coat the glass with whiskey, and then you know you're mostly getting whiskey. Cherry menthol tunes. Superb. So that menthol thing. So the green thing is kind of, I'm going to go with menthol now. Always looking for a little bit of spice to see if I can get any spice in there just now. If I'm really searching it, maybe some light chili and cinnamon, but I'm forcing it, honestly. Let's just go in and have a wee sip. Cheers, everyone. Much drier than expected. Wonder if any of the casks involved here are European oak. A little bit more tannic. The nose was suggesting I was going to be getting some figgy, pruny, fudgy sweetness. No. Everything that was delivered there is dry. Everything is, you want to reach for a big chunk of cheese with this one. This is a much more tannic. Black tea on the palate. Heavy, but dry. And it dries as it finishes. It dries on the finish as well. It plays a little bit like European oak would, as opposed to American oak. American oak tends to be a bit more sweeter, a bit juicier, a bit rounder. Not always all the time, but in my experience, European oak can play a wee bit more like this. Maybe the sherry, it may be the sherry that's bringing the dryness, whatever kind of previous incumbent this was. Full on, bold, unashamed, no bones about it. If you like this style of whiskey, if you like teapot dram, if you like that style of product, higher ABV sherry whiskey, Aberlour Abuna perhaps, you would pick this up and enjoy it, I think. Aye. Neck pour. I predict that balsamic vinegar, everything, the dryness will sweeten, and as things round out, as this gets a bit of air, I think that this will become better and better. I need to find a way to report back to you. But let me kind of put a little ribbon on this for you. I paid £50 for this. 50 and change, 55 maybe. £55. And I think that that's the kind of point that I want to make tonight. Let's imagine, I don't know how this Old Perth came about. I don't know if they took single malts and blended them together to make a blended malt, or they took a parcel of blended malt and did something extra to it, or just took it as it was or whatever. But we've ended up with a blended malt. The label has to say blended malt because it's not a single malt. We, as aficionados, as enthusiasts, as whiskey lovers, as flavour chasers, we need to make the most of this labelling right now as it exists today, blended malt. Because if this was a bottle of Aberlour Abuna, if this was a teapot dram or a Glenlivet Nadura sherry cask or something, there is no way we'd be picking it up for £55. But we would not be getting a single malt. But if we put it in a lineup alongside the Glenlivet and the Glengoyne and the Abuna, the Aberlour, and we said to people, pick out the single malt versus the blended malt, I can't imagine there are many folk out there would be able to, I certainly would not be able to pull that off. I've had a dram from Danny saying Slancha Varoy, another fantastic vPub on a very interesting topic, and he's buying me a super dram as well. Thank you very much, Danny. Danny Keenan, sorry. Wonderful to have you in as always, my friend, and thank you very much for the generous dram. Cheers, Danny. Menthol thing still there. Loving it though. Like a Lockett's menthol, less of the cherry menthol now, like more of that honey and menthol thing from, I don't know, I'm using all these British medicinal sweets. Apologies for folk that don't know what tunes and Lockett's are, but it's here. Christopher Malloy's bought another dram. Can you concoct an imaginary blended malt? Christopher, I've done it in the past on the vPub before. I want to talk about it because it's great fun. And Martin Fielder has also bought me a dram to say encouraging trying the elements of Isla. You star. Thanks, Martin. I might just do that. Listen, I used to love, much in the same way I just talked about Compass Box, trying to recreate a Brora. When my Brora was gone and finished, I'm not talking about the one I have here. I'm talking about an original old Gordon MacPhail Brora that I had. What I wanted to do was try and make a Brora alike. And what I would do is I would take something, honestly, a style of whiskey like this, exactly this style of whiskey is what I would take, but then add just a wee bit of gloopy, old school, earthy, but just tablespoons at a time of peated whiskey into the mix and leave it and leave it and leave it. I'll show you the bottle I use for that very thing. It's sitting here empty right now. Eventually, I made an infinity bottle that was so good, so delicious, that I let it go beyond the line, the fill line. So the idea of an infinity bottle, right, is that idea that you keep adding and it never drops below this line, so that whatever goes into the bottle, there's always going to be something left of it in there for as long as it goes. I've got quite a few infinity bottles on the go. But this one was so lovely. I could not bring myself to add anything more to it. I didn't want to spoil it. It was literally one of my favorite bottles on the shelf. Loved it so much. So I've let it run dry, and I'm now looking at something else to kind of build this up and how I can get something close to that again. And that's what I was trying to do, Christopher. I was trying to make a Brora alike, or as I called it, a bogus Brora. Sometimes I was fairly successful and I got something I was really happy with. It's not ever going to be Brora, of course, but in terms of flavour profile, it could be close. And that's the beauty of blended malts. Imagine you just went into Clynelish and say, okay, you can make a Brora alike from Clynelish. Of course you can, but the cost would be so prohibitive and expensive. But if you had the ability to open up to Strathmill and Balmainach and Deanston and lots of other distilleries that could do something similar in terms of style, you could do it for a hell of a lot cheaper. And that is the essence, that's the magic, that's the excitement, that's the promise of a blended malt. That's why it's so cool. Okay, Martin, let's put this sherry cask Old Pear to the side, and let's get this. Oh, it's one of those really, I'm going to need to get a blade out for this, I think. It's one of those, oh no, they've given us a cheat. They've given us a way out. Look, take a bit of time. Look at it. There's a wee pull tab on it. Let's see if it works. Elements of Isla. Elements of Isla is an elixir spirits brand. So if you think Port Askig, think Single Malts of Scotland. They do pretty good whiskies. Interestingly as well, this is a new release. They used to be 50 CL, but this is now 70 CL. They used to be single malts as well. Come on, focus. There you go, 54.5%. Oliver Chilton's signature on there. So it's obviously a blended malt whiskey. But in this one, Elements of Isla, okay, the clues in the Elements of Isla. Rather than being LG for, the suggestion was it was Lagavulin that would be in there as a single malt. What we've got here is a blended malt. So they're taking the stocks and they're putting it together. And there is an argument that could theoretically bring a better experience than trying all of these individual, whatever the casks may be, Elements of Isla single malts. Not always, not all of the time, but the promise is that. Will this glug? A wee bit. Now I've tried this. I know I'm going to like this whiskey, or I feel confident that I'm going to like this whiskey because I've tried it. But this is the first time I've had a bottle. It wasn't too expensive. I think £60, going from memory. Ah, gee, this is the type of whiskey that makes you realise that you don't need that Lagavulin 12-year-old cask strength. At £135. Maybe this whiskey that's in front of me right now that I'm tasting is not 12 years old. There's no age statement on the bottle. All it tells me that it's matured in bourbon casks. Coal smoke, tropical fruit, maple syrup is the tasting notes. Aye, I'll take all of those, but. So there's no obvious pull to Bowmore, so I'm not getting the kind of really quite herbal elements that you'll get in a Bowmore. I'm not getting much of the iodine and medicinal side. I'm not getting the from Lafroig. I'm not getting the Ardbeg suit. What I am actually getting here is something that's much more Lagavulin in style. I'm going to suggest a huge chunk of this is Caol Ila, so that makes sense. If that was the flavour and the experience that came out of a bottle of a Lagavulin 12 cask strength, people would be happy. There's a tiny bit of youth to it, but it's nothing. It's sweet and it's balanced and it's elegant. The peat is there and it's strong peat. It's really attention grabbing, smoky. It's more of a savoury, more of a kind of, honey syrup and barbecue style peat smoke, rather than a kind of more sooty ashen peat. It's not TCP, it's not medicinal, not for me, not for my palate. I need to check to see what I paid for this. I need to check the price, because I'm now going to talk very, very positively about this. I'm very glad this is as good as I hoped it was. Maybe I bought it in the Spirits Company. No, £60. 59.85. It's less than half the price of Lagavulin 12. 70 cl bottles now. This is what's exciting about blended malts. If we are having our single malts taken away from us, Lagavulin 12 is so precious now that Diageo have to charge us £135 for a 12-year-old, albeit cask strength product, and delicious product, quite honestly. But if we are truly into flavour over perhaps provenance and many other things, and if we can sit down and we can enjoy these in company and maybe blind and kind of sip together, I just feel like maybe I should grab the 12-year-old Lagavulin right now and try it side by side. Give me a second. I didn't expect to be doing this. I didn't intend to do this. Thank you, Martin Fielder, for your encouragement / bullying. This is the 2022, I think, the 2022 special release Lagavulin. As Scott Monroe says, after they got the crayons out for the label, 57.3%. Very enjoyable whiskey, very good indeed. Let's try it. Ashen, crisp, more beach, more kind of coastal style, cleaner, lighter. No, not cleaner. Lighter, fresher, maybe. Sticking my nose right inside cask strength drams and expecting to pick everything out. So this is more rounded. This has kind of got that really nice kind of sweet, syrupy foundation. And this is kind of crisper and fresher. It's good. It's very good. Very good. Lagavulin 12 is very good. It's, I've been raving about it for years. Love it. Is it £135 good? Well, obviously not, because there's years gone by that I haven't been buying it. I did get a 2020, and this is a 2022, but I only bought that 2022 for a very specific vPub. Yeah, I'm glad to have it here. Am I going to replace it when it disappears? Absolutely not. £135 is too expensive. This, for £60, brings 90% of the experience. And I would even argue in other areas that the Lagavulin does not bring, it brings more. Honey, syrup, with all of the other delicious things, salty, salt and caramel. I'll be honest with you. If I was given these two glasses and said you can take one and you take one bottle home and have nothing else to do, I would take the Lagavulin. That's the truth. But it's by a nudge. It's tiny. This is such a good, lovely, together, satisfying, fabulous bottle of whiskey for £60 that I don't care about the oil painting by numbers label of Lagavulin being on the shelf anymore. I would be much, much more satisfied having this and pouring it for folk as they come along and look for a nice big dollop of Islay from a bourbon cask. Fantastic. $59.95. The off-putting thing for many people is going to be that B word. We need to get over that, I think. We need to understand that we are now being held hostage to distilleries trading on their name. That's fine. They're businesses. We know that they are. But if we follow the brand, if we follow the name and we don't follow flavour, we're making fools of ourselves, our lives. Or if we follow flavour, if we follow enjoyment, if we follow engagement, that might mean that it's a blended malt. And that might mean that we end up loving it. Absolutely loving it. How are we doing for time? 1:37. Okay. There is a quiz at the end tonight. Of course, there's a quiz at the end tonight, like always. If there wasn't a quiz at the end, I'm sure there would be mutiny. So please stay for the quiz if you can. Sugar Kitty is saying, if you didn't buy the 2021 Lagavulin 12, you missed it. The Lion's Fire is the only one I could say is worth it. Yeah, lots of them. I did miss out. I got the 2020 and the 2022. The one with the lion on it, is the one that everybody raves about and says is the best. And other people say that, yeah, okay, even if you decide it's the best, it's not that obvious. But the truth is, you're absolutely right, Sugar Kitty. And it would just be very, very typical if the best one to have gambled on is the one I didn't buy. But that's it's not just you saying that. Most people are saying the same thing. Absolutely. Jimmy Legs bought me a dram. I'm right. How many whiskies are you having tonight? Don't make me tell Lynn about this. Lynn can drive me to the airport in the morning, Jimmy. I think I'll be fine. I did end up having at least one extra. What did I have? I had an Old Perth. I had a Juveniles, and I may have to have another Juveniles. I had a wee Lagavulin. It's not finished yet, and Elements of Islay. The one I opened with was the Hazelnut Harmony Noble Rebel, which I was enjoying very, very much. So that's 5, isn't it? But for a Thursday night, that's just about enough. Jimmy, thank you for looking after my health and better interests, buddy. Listen, the quiz at the end is always multiple choice. It's lots of fun. The last few quizzes have been a wee bit tricky, especially if you participated in the vPub Menno quiz that was on 2 weeks ago. I did try to bring something that was still challenging but could have afforded some 10 out of 10s last week. I think I failed. I didn't hear about any 10 out of 10s last week. But tonight, I'm fairly confident that there's a good chance that some of you will get 10 out of 10. I can't make it easy. As soon as there's no challenge to the vPub, it's not fun anymore, right? Sorry, the quiz at the end on the vPub. It's not fun anymore. It has to be something that still engages people. Graham Fraser is saying, you need any more vPub quiz at the end, distillery photos, Roy? Getting a wee bit light, Graham. I'm using my own pictures now, as you'll see tonight. So if you've got some for me, buddy, let me know. Also, I would like to know just how deep your library is, because I've got another project that you might be interested in supporting me on. We can talk about that offline, buddy. Nice to see you in, Graham, as always. Jerry Miller is here. Fantastic to see you, Jerry. Peter Lee has made it in after his shift as well. Wonderful to see you, Peter. I know that you've probably had a hard day. It's always nice that you catch the vPub. I'm just going to scroll back and see if there. Yeah, I missed that one. Matthew Edgeworth. Good to see you, Matthew. I'm not sure if I've welcomed you before. It's brilliant to welcome you tonight. And he's saying, he's speaking Gaelic, I think. Ochima, folks, or I don't know how to pronounce that. I've never seen that word before. Interesting subject as always. Matthew, brilliant to have you in. And if you're a native Gaelic speaker, it'd be brilliant to have your support for certain things that could be happening in the future. Okay, the quiz at the end. We always finish with a quiz at the end. I encourage you all to stay and know that it's always multiple choice. And, you know, even if you're just guessing, you've got a good chance of getting 33%. I participated 2 weeks ago and I got the brutal worst ever performance on the Menos quiz on the vPub. I managed to score 2 out of 10. Absolutely horrific. Absolutely horrific. I forgot to share the polls with you tonight now that I look at these. It's going to be interesting to see this. This is the community opinion of blended malts, by the way. So this is I put out 3 polls. I put out one on Twitter, one on Patreon, and one on YouTube. You can see this poll here, and I've asked people what your genuine thoughts are about blended malts. What's closest to you? Do you love them and you actively seek them out? Do you think they're pretty good and enjoy sometimes? Do you think they're fine, but you're a bit ambivalent? Or do you think that it's all about single malt for you? Well, it's really encouraging to see that 60%, and these numbers are pretty consistent throughout the polls, 60% are there or thereabouts. Well over half say they're pretty good and they enjoy them sometimes, or they actively seek them out, is another 20%. So that we're looking at 80% of the people in the community are wide open to blended malts. Caveat that with the fact that they have to be good value and they have to be tasty. You can see some apathy further down, 20% or so of people saying that they're a bit ambivalent or they're only into single malts. Click forward to Twitter. See, the numbers are almost the same. A wee bit higher for the people into it, 84% real whiskey crowd in Twitter. But again, 15% saying that they're either ambivalent or into single malt only. And then finally on YouTube, which was probably the biggest, we can't see the numbers. They're just off screen there, but I can tell you what they are for the YouTube numbers. It was 58% saying that they enjoy it sometimes, and 14% saying that they love them and actively seek them out, giving us a total of close to 3/4 actually there. And then about 20 to 25% being a bit ambivalent or saying that it's single malt only for me, thanks, was 8% there. So you can see the community is open, the community is ready for these things. But I do think that they have to be compelling value propositions. If you look at that Elements of Islay and say, this is a tasty whiskey, £60 worth of whiskey. Okay, your alternative is to get a similar experience from official bottlings. This daft things like this Lagavulin 12 now at £135. That's not for enthusiasts anymore. That's for folk with lots of money, honestly. Now, if you're a diehard Lagavulin fan, fine, go ahead and buy it. Nobody's going to judge you. We understand that exactly. We understand exactly what that's about. But for so many of us, the whiskey is more important. The flavour is more important. The sharing is more important than any brand. And once a brand starts to take more than it gives, that's when it's time to look elsewhere. And I think it's wonderful to be here in a time that there's lots and lots of elsewhere. Anyway, who's parachuted for the quiz? We're down at 280, so it's settled. We're ready for the quiz at the end. Good luck, everyone. I hope you have fun with this one. I've tried to pitch it a wee bit kinder than we have in the last few weeks. I hope that we can celebrate raising a glass for somebody getting a 10 out of 10, but it's not going to be a freebie if you do get a 10 out of 10 tonight. It's going to still have to be hard work. You're going to have to graft for it. And Bruce is, I've got a German guy telling me that Ochima means good night. Fantastic. Wonderful stuff. Bruce, I've just assumed that you're German. You might not be. Jimmy Legg is saying, is there a theme for me to guess? There is not a theme tonight. Jimmy, tonight's quiz is actually a mishmash of saved questions. I pulled in from a reserve of older questions. Not old questions have not been used before. They're all fresh, but I pulled in questions that kicked a theme out of kilter. But I'm glad that you asked, because it's kind of good to have people knowing in advance if there's a theme or not. Good luck, everyone. Question 1. Which of these distillery pairs belong in Elgin, Speyside? So Elgin is the town in Speyside I'm talking about, and it's a very loose concept of pairs. These are not genuinely pairs, but what I'm asking you, is there a pair here? Which of them belongs in the town of Elgin? We always start easy, so this should be easy. A, Longmorn and Glen Elgin. B, Manachmore and Glenlossie. C, Glenmurray and Linkwood. Please don't click away. Don't switch off now. Don't think, oh, this guy is awful. Stay with the program. Do your best. Guess as best you can. Rob Smith is saying 0 out of 1. I guarantee you, Rob, you're wrong. And James Morgan is saying, I'll expect a good score tonight. Oh. There's probably only one pair there. A genuine pair configuration, a genuine sister distilleries. Willem Killian is in. Good to see you, Willem. He's saying, just thought I would pop in and see, I'm just in time for the quiz. I almost never get to catch one live. William, it's brilliant to welcome you. I'm glad I managed to catch you dropping in tonight. Answer away. It doesn't matter. All 6 of these distilleries are Elgin distilleries. 6 out of 8 Elgin distilleries are here tonight, so they are all theoretically paired. Not by company, not by owner, but they are all Elgin distilleries. So the first question tonight, everybody gets a freebie. That won't happen every week, but it's happening tonight. The only real true sister distilleries there are Manachmore and Glenlossie, but Longbourn and Glen Elgin are more or less geographically very close together, and Glenmurray and Linkwood are not far apart either. Freebie to start with. Question 2, hopefully reasonably easy. When Johnny Walker logo changed direction in 1999, what else happened? This is a question inspired by the Dramface podcast. We released it today to members. It goes out on Monday to everybody else. Sorry it's taken us so long. But when Johnny Walker, when its logo changed direction in 1999, what else happened? A, he lost his cane. B, he stopped tilting his hat. Or C, he lost his red jacket. Jens Roger Christofferson is here. Good to see you, buddy. He's saying he walked home. Roman Shovranek, it looks like Roman Shovranek. I'm not sure I've read out your name before, Roman, but you're saying, wow, unbeaten today, 1 out of 1, fantastic. Michael Wood is saying, oh no, I got it wrong. You cannot have got it wrong. Freebie, that's how I graduated from school, says Jerry Miller. So what happened, as well as Johnny Walker changing direction? Did he also lose his cane? Did he stop tilting his hat? Or did he lose his red jacket? Most of you's got this absolutely right. Some of you's wobbled a wee bit, saying he stopped tilting his hat. He lost his red jacket. Is the answer. Let's look at these logos here. Here is the original Johnny Walker logo that existed only in the 90s, I think. It didn't look like this in the 80s, but this is in 1990s Johnny Walker. He's walking backwards, so to speak. a wee bow tie on there. He's still doffing his cap. He's holding his hand up, or he's maybe just holding his wee monocle up in this one. The negative space doesn't tell us all. But then if you look at the new logo, it's much more, it's a really good job. I have to say, the branding. Look at this. As he walks forward, much more purposeful, much more dynamic. Lots of negative space used in the design here, but just still very, very clear and suggestive. But that's the new Johnnie Walker. He's doffing his cap. He's got his cane, but he doesn't have a red jacket. Go and listen to the Dramface podcast for a wee bit more Johnnie Walker chat. Question 3, everyone. Hellswood is celebrating 2 out of 2 already. Bladnoch's master distiller, Dr. Nick Savage, was formerly the master distiller. Where? Where was Nick Savage before he was at Bladnoch? A. Glenturret. B. Glenfiddich. C. Macallan. Now, this was a question I pulled in from my stash of questions, and I modified it and tried to make it a wee bit easier because it was harder. And I thought, no, I'm not being fair. It's easy to make a difficult quiz. It's difficult to make a challenging quiz that's still quite good fun and achievable. Yuri is in thinking it's Macallan. Seaweed World. Seaweed World? Is that Sherry, I wonder? Good to see you in. Jimmy Jazz is here as well. Thanks. Also it's C. JV is saying a savage question for number 3. JV, I think that's also a new name. Okay, I get it now. A savage question. Oh, brilliant. Superb. Please come back again. I'm glad I was sharp enough at this time of night to pick that up. And she is, as she's admitted, she said, yes, it's Sherry. Wonderful to see you, Sherry. I hope you're keeping well. I can tell you that Nick Savage worked for William Grant's. He also worked at Diageo and also Macallan. He was master distiller at Macallan before he went to Bladnoch. So if you answered Macallan, 3 out of 3, hopefully. Question 4. Glengarry reinstated their malt floors in 2022 and will soon be able to provide how much of their own needs? So this is kind of strange for distilleries to be going back to that. Glengarry's super fascinating to me. They've put in their wash still as a direct fired wash still. They've really extended their distillation times. And they're also putting in floor maltings as well. They're really moving back towards that old school style, which is very interesting for a large scale distillery to do. But how much of their floor maltings will provide their own, how much of their own needs can be provided by their floor maltings? Is it A, 25%, B, 50%, or C, 90%? A, 25, B, 50, C, 90. Mikey Larson is on a 3 out of 3 tonight. Well done, Mikey. Little Whiskey Shop. Jimmy, I'm still learning. If you can teach me how to sell BM, I am all ears. Maybe speaking to Jimmy Legg. Little Whiskey Shop looks like a new name. And Roman is saying just shooting for B for 50%. Yeah, there's going to be a wee bit of guesswork here, but the majority seem to think it's a mere 25. Graham Fraser, who's always got a strong score in the quiz, is going A. Benny Fries is in as well. Good to see you, Benny. Gino Camo is on A as well. Nicholas is here saying B. Ian Bose and Danny Hebington. W. Log. It looks like Logan, but it's not. It's I don't even know how to. That's not something I can say. WLGOAGN is thinking it's A. I can tell you that it is indeed a mere 25%. It is A, despite the investment in their own floor maltings, much like Bemore, Lefroy, most of the other distilleries out there, with the exception of Springbank. It's always just a component of what they actually need. Neil Sengupta is in saying, are most distilleries moving to this now that Diageo are stopping selling them from Port Ellen? I doubt it. I don't think that's going to happen. We're not going to move back to the early 20th century where they all have their own floor maltings. I think it's just a flavour thing. What you'll see to plug the Diageo gap is more capacity from the other alternative maltsters, Neil. Good to see you in, buddy. Here we have our image tonight, our picture question, one of my own pictures. Not a particularly good picture, but quite a compelling scene we're looking at here. And of course, I'm just going to ask you which distillery we could be looking at here. Are we looking at A, Tormore, B, Clynelish, or C, Colilla? Whiskey with Molly slipped. Oh my goodness, Ben. 3 out of 4. What's tripped you up tonight, I wonder? Savara's here. Graham Fraser is saying you only need 5 to David Swift for a pass mark. That's right. Pass mark is always 5. Matt F is here. Good to see Matt. I'm always worried about the amount of names that I miss. Rob Too Slow is in tonight. Chuck Malt Minion is here as well. Adrian Madrigal. Good to see Adrian. He's saying best men are not single. Just look at me. I rest my case. The best men are not single, so therefore the best malts potentially are not single. Thank you very much for the drama, friend. Always good to welcome you in. Cheers, Adrian. Adrian? Madrigal? Let's go with Adrian. Frank is saying, no, it is Colilla. Frank, you're absolutely right. Peathead Frank is nailing it. It's Colilla. I can tell you as I take the screen away there to show the big board. This is actually the new visitor experience at Colilla. I have to say it's impressive. The tour is formulaic but good. It is genuinely a good tour. You can see how important and how interesting it would be for somebody if it was their only tour, for example, or if they were fairly new in as well. They cover all bases. But the place, how they've managed to develop that whole site, to leverage the views that they have there over the Sound of Islay, over to it's fantastic. It's quite impressive, I have to say. The distillery remains great. The whiskey remains great. How that whiskey is being sold to us remains brutal. Question 6. What colour tends to be used for the wash still and its fittings in a distillery? So I'm talking about the rings that bolt pipes and connections and things together. Sometimes they're on the bolsters of the still door. It's always painted a colour in order for you to know what you're looking at in the process in a distillery. But I'm looking at the wash still, the wash side of things. What colour would that be? It would typically be A, blue, B, red, C, black. And the little whiskey shop is saying that Colilla is their favourite distillery. Neil is saying 5 out of 5. First time ever. The picture was a guess. Neil, try and keep it together. Chuck Malt Minion's on 5 out of 5 as well. This is Sugar Kitty, Gino Cumeau, Andrew M, Pete Head, Lassie Hjort Oddsman. Good to see all of you. 5 out of 5. Danny Hebington, 5. Simon Oliver, 5. Lots of you. Jerry Miller, Steve Atkis, Tony Nelson. Okay, this is a good chance tonight. Cesare Mocha, Cesare Mocha. Wonderful to have you in. Interesting name. Peter Box, 5 out of 5. Graham Cartwright, 5 out of 5. Wow, lots of 5 out of 5s. We're doing quite well so far. I hope I don't lose you on the tricky and challenging second half. I can tell you that if you're looking at the wash still side of things, it tends to be red. Blue is for the spirit side of things, and black is, well, I've not really seen much in the way of black. It's just in there to make up the options. Red. And I've got a wee image here for you. This image that we had here. Look, you can see the blue around the ring of the spirit stills there. And in the background, you see the rings around the top of the line arm there, holding the line arm together. You can just about see that they are red. So as you're walking around the distillery, next time you're touring a distillery, and you look at the reds and the blues, you can ask the question, or you can work out what you're actually looking at in terms of the plumbing of things. Question 7. What is Germany's oldest malt distillery? What is Germany's oldest malt distillery? If I can help anyone here, you need to focus on the word malt. Germany has been distilling for centuries, but I'm specifically asking about malt. Is it A, blue mouse or Blaumaus, I think would be the pronunciation, B, slurs, or C, St. Killian? Pete Ed is saying still operating, I suppose. Aye, still operating. You can still buy the stuff today. Oh, wow. Oh, no. I've lost everyone. Oh, no. I was hoping to get it through to the end. There is a banana skin in this one. I think it's tough. I think it's difficult. I think you're not going to get this one, it seems. People are going with the familiar names. I've not tried any Blaumaus distillate or whiskey. I've tried slurs. I've tried St. Killian. Maybe when I get to Limburg at the end of the month, I'll get to try some Blue Mouse whiskey. But it is the oldest malt distillery in Germany. Slurs and St. Killian, they have been producing for a long time. St. Killian, the 90s, I think. Slurs, 100, more than 100 years. But they weren't making malt whiskey. Blue Mouse is the oldest malt producer. So I, as Rob Smith is saying, it is a bit of a banana skin. I'm going to feel bad. Why, Roy, why is saying Jimmy Legg? Oh, Jimmy, he's on 3 tonight. Jimmy, my goodness. It's tough. It's tough. Jimmy, maybe you should put together a quiz one time. Question 8. Which of these does not have a currently available official 16-year-old release? I'm going to give you 3 options. And I'm going to ask you to think about official releases from the producers and think about the one that does not have an official 16-year-old. Banana skin here. A, Clynelish. B, Dalhuen. C, Glenelgan. 3 Diageo distilleries. One of those doesn't have a 16-year-old. The other 2 do have a 16-year-old official release. Jimmy Legg. I sent you a quiz many a year ago. I was ignored. Jimmy, I need to search for that. I'm going to make a note. Jimmy Legg's quiz. It's really hard for me. I always have guilt about the amount of messages and emails that do end up. Oh my goodness. There is a banana skin here. Some of you are sliding about on it. Huh. George L is reminding everyone to hit the like button. That would be amazing if there's enough of you here still enjoying yourself with the quiz at the end, despite my challenging questions. Hit the wee thumbs up. The question is Flora and Fauna official? Benny, absolutely. It's an official release. Flora and Fauna is absolutely a Diageo official release. No question. But it's not Dalhuen. Dalhuen is a 16-year-old, and it is the Flora and Fauna. Clynelish is a 14-year-old, but the Four Corners release from them is a Clynelish 16 years old. The only one that currently does not have a 16-year-old is Glenelgan. The Four Corners official release from Clynelish is the banana skin there. It's quite pricey. I heard it's delicious. I'm not willing to invest in it. Maybe I can spend my money on things like Compass Box Juveniles for a similar flavor profile. BMO is saying 5 out of 10 again. I think I've lost. It's always tough on the back end, on the way back to the 10th question. It's always tough. Boo to banana, says Seaweed World. Sorry, Sherry. 5 out of 8. The back 5 is tough, says Danny. I'm starting to lose you now. It does get trickier. Question 9, second from last. Loch Lomond Distillery has traditional pot stills, straight neck pot stills, continuous stills, and of course, a coffee still used for malt. But which of these came first? Which of those stills came first? A, their straight neck stills came first. B, their continuous grain stills came first. Or C, the traditional swan neck pot stills came first? When I say came first, what I'm talking about is the installation. Mid-60s is the founding time frame for Loch Lomond. Relatively speaking, a modern distillery. No idea. We'll say B, says Greg's Whiskey Guide, thinking the continuous grain stills came first. I can tell you that Loch Lomond was built with only straight-necked pot stills in place originally. Shortly after, they followed it up with more straight-necked pot stills, and thereafter they added some grain continuous stills, and then eventually in the 90s, as well as the grain stills getting added in the 90s. Later in the 90s, they added swan neck stills, and then finally, and in the 2000s, they added the continuous still for malt. Now you have to remember that Loch Lomond was built to kind of mirror the distillation style at Little Mill, which is where they got the inspiration for their straight-necked pot still design. Was banana skin. The straight-necked pot still is probably my favourite style of distillate, especially at low collection strength, using Chardonnay yeast, please. I think it's fantastic, as you all know. Listen, this is brutal tonight. In the end, it started off looking really positive, and now it's become a bit tricky. Let's see how we're doing now. We've got an 8 out of 9 from Pedro. Well done, Pedro. Maness's insight on an 8 out of 9. Fantastic. 9 out of 9 for Steve Atkis. Brilliant, Steve. We'll get somebody that can maybe scrape over the line. Jerry Miller is there as well on a 9 out of 9 as well, waiting to be undone by the asshat. I know. Jerry, hold tight. Be confident. Keep the confidence. Any other 9 out of 9s? Anyone I'm missing? Graham Fraser is celebrating an 8 out of 9, saying few. Let's go for the asshat, says Pedro. So we always finish on an asshat. Got a couple of 9 out of 9s out there, Sugar Kitty. Yes, I spotted them. How are you doing with yours? And excess to Scotch is saying, come on, asshat. There is an asshat here tonight. Mild asshat, I would say, but nevertheless an asshat. Good luck, everyone. How many Scottish distilleries boast a royal warrant? How many distilleries have a royal warrant? Is it about the same as A, the number of distilleries with a working Lomond still? B, the number of distilleries with operational worm tub condensers? Or C, about the same as the number of distilleries with operating floor maltings? Don't ask, says Sugar Kitty. Okay, don't worry. Peter is saying, love this quiz over simple questions. Okay, Frank, I'm glad that you like it too. It remains, I should admit to everyone that I have never participated in one of my quizzes that's been hosted by Menno or anyone else and managed to get anything close to a 10 out of 10. You guys are amazing. The knowledge that's out there, the way that you're able to navigate these quizzes are just amazing to me. This is a tricky thing. The asshat questions are tricky because you often have to know the answer to two completely different things in order to get it. That's the definition of an asshat. Sevar is saying no idea, so he's going with A. You're nailing your colours to the A mast. Whiskey with Molly saying you got a 9 out of 10 on my Irish quiz, Aquavitae. Oh, wow. Did I? You been nice to me? Did I really get a 9 out of 10? That would be amazing. So that was last year, of course, Ben, wasn't it? Brilliant. Okay, I've still not had a 10 out of 10, but I'll take the 9. Thank you. So I can tell you that the amount of the Scottish distilleries to boast a royal warrant, well, those with operating malt floors, I think the number is currently either 8 or 9, because there's one of them here that we're not particularly sure if they're actually operating it yet. Worm tub condensers, we're looking at somewhere in the order of 19 now. It's on the rise, on the increase. And those with a working Lomond still, Scapa and Bruichladdich. And Bruichladdich, they make gin, not malt whiskey, so it's only 2. And the amount of royal warrants that's out there, 2. Lafroig has a royal warrant, and Royal Lochnagar has a royal warrant. Distilleries, despite the likes of Royal Bracla still having royal in the name, they don't actually have a valid royal warrant. So there you go, quite a difference. 2, only 2 have working Lomond stills, and only 2 have royal warrants that are valid. So let's see, did anybody scrape through to getting a 10 out of 10? 9 out of 10 for Graham Fraser. He's celebrating, saying fantastic. Mr. CJL is saying 3 out of 10. I'm terrible. CJ, stay. Stay. Stick with it. Don't worry about it. I have scored worse than 3 out of 10, and I've admitted the same. It was as recently as 2 weeks ago in the vPub. Greg's Whiskey Guide is saying 19, would have only said about 7 or 8 max. You're talking about worm tubs, aren't you? I've actually got the list here. I can tell you, Greg. Ardnahoe, Ballinadaloch, Benrinnes, Glenkinchie, Craigenmore, Dalwhinnie, Glenelgin, Mortlach, or Oban, Royal Lochnagar, Talisker, Craigellach, Edrida, Balmainach, Knockdhu, Old Pulteney, Speyburn, Rosebank, and Springbank. Remember, it doesn't have to be, a wash spirit. It just any worm tub in operation anywhere. And then you've got, I think Ardnahoe's up there, but obviously there's some smaller, newer distilleries using worm tubs. That I think that number is potentially going to increase. Who is on a 10? Come on. Got a 5, so C student. It's a pass, Mikey. Brilliant, good stuff. Greg's Whiskey Guide is saying, okay, got my pass mark at 5 out of 10. BMO is on a pass as well. Survived, says Whiskey and Wine Trails. Tom on a 6. Lassie Ortsman is saying, fantastic quiz. Thank you, Lassie. How did you score? Last 5 were all ass-hats. Simon Oliver. Simon, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Hey, but some of you managed a 10 out of 10. Tell me. 10 out of 10 for Steve Atkiss, you beauty. Steve, well done. Congratulations, my friend. Well done. Superb. He's celebrating his 10 out of 10, and he's using his 10 emoji as well. Craig G is saying, can I get a point if it's my birthday? It's not, but I need to live in hope. If you are here on your birthday, you can take as many points as you like. You can even take a 10 out of 10, and we'll raise a glass with you to celebrate your birthday, my friend. Absolutely, we will. Brilliant stuff. Any other 10 out of 10s? Come on. Somebody else managed to get it. Steve Atkiss is blown away. I think you might be the only one tonight, Steve, on a 10. Brilliant stuff. Brilliant stuff. Danny Hebington has bought me a dram to say another fine night, Mr. Duff. Thank you very much. Danny, Mr. Hebington, thank you very much to you as well. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you for your support, and thanks for staying for the quiz at the end. And Seva, despite me forgetting and not seeing your dram that you bought me last week, you've bought me a generous dram tonight, Seva. Danny, Seva, my friends, thank you very much for your generosity. Seva is saying thanks for a great vPub. Cheers, buddy. Cheers to you both. Great stuff. Let's get rid of that poll now. That's not needed anymore. I think what we're going to do is just kind of monitor the whole blended malt scenario. I'm loving it. I'm loving the value that it's bringing. I'm loving the creativity that it's bringing, but I'm also loving that people realize that it doesn't need to be about very specific things. When you have the flexibility, the openness, the unlimited options that blended malts give you, that's an exciting space. If we're into whiskey for the sake of flavor, we should be embracing blended malts. It doesn't mean that we need to give up what our current lane is, whether that's single malts, whether that's world whiskies or bourbons or blends or whatever, but more likely single malts. We don't need to give up the single malts in order to embrace the extra potential that blended malts could give us. I feel like always I'm selling it, but what I'm actually doing is trying to preserve our community, preserve our sanity in the face of these prices and these whiskies that continually disappear out of reach. Not only have we got lots of new distilleries, lots of new products, lots of new malts, lots of new releases coming along, but we've got a whole entire new categories, new sectors, the likes of blended malt. Dave Swift has also bought me a dram. Lovely to catch a vPub live in with a quiz fail. Oh, bless you, Dave. Best get back to the cooking. Good Friday lunch before I'm in the penalty box. Ah, brilliant. Happy Easter all. Have a brilliant Easter weekend, Dave. Thank you very much for joining in from New Zealand, buddy. Cheers to you, my friend. Graham Fraser is saying, thanks again, Roy. Great vPub. Brilliant, great, Graham. Always nice to have you in. Let's speak about the potential of using some photos from you soon. Danny Williams is gifting some Aquavite memberships as well. Thank you, buddy. And Ben, Whiskey with Molly, is saying, life changes tomorrow with the arrival of my boy. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. Ben, please let us know how things go with you tomorrow. And Jerry Miller is saying, an award for most times undone by asshat. Jerry, aye, the asshat is there for a very reason. If it was an easy quiz, how much of a challenge would it be, right? The asshats make it. We'll always blame Jimmy Legg for the asshats. And Ben, Whiskey with Molly, keep in touch with how tomorrow goes, buddy. Cheers. Wonderful stuff. I never know how interesting it's going to be talking about things that are not single malts. I crowbarred the title to say the best malts that are not single, and specifically not to use the B word, to make a point. I think it's still a bit of a limitation. I think it's still something that holds us back a wee bit. I think it needs to be just malt whiskey. And if we want to specify it further than that, then it can be single malt. But that's just me. How do you feel about it? I've loved hanging out with you tonight. I've loved sharing these whiskies with you. There's still a couple more to open for future. So maybe another year or a year and a bit down the line, we'll talk about blended malts again. But for now, I've enjoyed hanging out with you all tonight and talking about, and I've really, the juveniles and the elements of Islay have really blown me away. Fantastic whiskies, great value, £60. £75 for the juveniles is a wee bit pricey, but it's honestly delicious. It's elegant as hell. The elements of Islay is cracking value. Delicious whiskey, good quality whiskey, £60, brilliant stuff. Jimmy Legg buys me a departing dram just to say, taking whiskey if of any kind is great with these people. Here's to that, Jimmy. What a brilliant sentiment. I'll raise this glass to you all, and I'll tell you that I think currently it's looking like it might be a solo event next week. And then the week after that, I'm remote. I am in the Isle of Rassay. And then the week after that is a guest slot. Going from memory. But it doesn't matter, because whatever we do, I get to hang out with you, fantastic people, every Thursday night. And for that, I'll be forever grateful. I'll raise this delicious glass of Elements of Islay, 60 quid, just gorgeous whiskey, and say, I look forward to hanging out with you next week. In the meantime, you're all very dearly loved. Sláinte mhath.